Unshackles.
Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of the Uncockables. I hope you had your red pills before tuning in tonight, because your body is going to need to be in reality for what we're going to discuss this week. I'm Tim Wilms, Editor-in-Chief of the Unshackled, and I'm joined here as always by the editor of the XYZ, David Hiscox.
Always a pleasure to be here, Tim.
And the host of the James Fox Higgins show and editor of The Rational Rise, James Fox Higgins. Welcome back to the show.
Thanks, Tim. Good to be here again.
Now, we know more about what occurred late on Saturday night, Australian time, the suicide of pedophile billionaire Jeffrey Epstein in his New York jail cell while he was awaiting trial on fresh child sex trafficking charges. So yes, suicide is what we were told.
I think you need to say that when you do the air quotes, you need to do that in the Dr. Evil voice as well.
Suicide.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, well, it's definitely alleged suicide, and the amazing thing is that no one in their right mind is buying it. Regardless of their political affiliations, people on the left and the right are coming together in our suspicion that there is corruption here. Now, of course, the left are, hashtag Trump body count, and believe, I've had people saying all signs point to Trump, which I think is absurd. But at least we agree with the lefties that something's up here, and we need some pretty hard evidence. A, that he's actually dead, which I'm skeptical of. B, the cause of death, and why the hell the cameras weren't pointed at his cell, why he was off suicide watch. Everything about it is suspicious, but they're just hoping that it'll go away within a week or so. People will just forget and start talking about something else. And you'll see it in the mainstream media. They'll just stop reporting.
Yeah, they'll bury it. I actually don't mind the fact that they're blaming Trump for exactly that reason. The fact that the lefties are like, hang on, the mainstream media are lying to us. If they're lying about that, what else are they lying about to us? It's like
and the amazing thing is that the people on the left are starting to realize that most of the people on the right who are Trump supporters are actually, people of principle, because we're saying, well, look, if Trump is responsible for this because he's trying to cover up that he's been involved in pedophilia, we want him impeached, imprisoned, and maybe even hung, drawn, and quartered in public square as well. Just because he's our guy doesn't mean we don't want to see him punished if he is actually guilty of this crime. Yeah. Everyone is sickened by pedophilia, except the globo homos and the pedophile apologists. And so I think we might actually see some degree of unification with the left on this particular matter.
It can be another weapons of mass destruction moment as well, because that's something the lefties were banging on about back in the early noughties, and back in the day, I was a neocon. I was arguing that Iraq had them, but like a lot of us have caught on to what the neocon agenda is all about a little later on. This is something where the left and right of European people can actually agree.
Yep,
and go.
That's
hang
it.
on,
So
we're being
it'll
played.
be interesting to see just how hard people push back against the inevitable attempts to bury the story. I mean, we're already seeing it in Australian papers. They're making it a minor affair.
Yeah.
Like I shared the other day something from the Daily Mail that was, the Daily Telegraph that was, it had this massive full-page article about Daniel Johns attending a fetish club in Chippendale and how far the star has fallen. And then this tiny little column at the bottom about Jeffrey Epstein.
Wow.
And it's like, that should be the front page. And Daniel Johns was the front page news. It's just a stupid gossip rag. I mean, who cares about this guy who's just, defiling himself? He's not hurting other people that we know of. Jeffrey Epstein is at the center of a global child sex trafficking racket that involves members of the British royal family and high-flying Democrats in America, and, possibly Donald Trump and possibly Bill Clinton. So we need to come together on this, and everyone in the world needs to demand that, a thorough, impartial, and open investigation is conducted. But it's not going to happen.
Yeah, that's the point. Like Jeffrey Epstein is the red pill. Like Jeffrey Epstein is pedogate. Like it's the it's the pivotal point on which this, and it's the door to finding out who's actually running the world, who's making the decisions, and what kind of people these are. Because
and who they work for ultimately.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. You're like, okay, so he was running a pedophile ring, but hang on, he's got connections to all these people. Why does he have footage of all of these people? Why would he want that? Who was he doing that for? Like, one question just inevitably leads to the next. What worries me is that we were making the argument essentially last week that the establishment uses mass murder as a way to drive the news cycle. So if that analysis is correct, like, what have they got in store?
Yeah. How are they going to distract us next?
Yeah.
And, it makes you wonder about, in Australia, the Sydney stabbing attack that happened in Sydney the other day. All of these psychopaths who have been going off lately, they're all mentally ill. That's why they're doing what they're doing. That's not an answer. Why do we face these problems in the West where people are going on these sprees? It's a much more complicated question than simply to say, oh, well, he was suffering mental illness. It's not beyond the realm of possibility that they're all, as Vox Day puts it, wind-up toys, that they're all people that the powers that be have identified as useful idiots or useful crazies that they can, trigger the last stage of the psyop upon and unleash them in order to break the news cycle of the things that they don't want us to be talking about.
We are now on entropy, which I've put the link to it in the live chat. This is something that Matty discovered, and he'll be on after you depart us, James. So you can send us super chats there, and YouTube, Google. Entropy doesn't take a bigger cut as they do, so more goes to us. They respond to you right away. Excellent customer service. You can also ask us questions, and I've just done a poll over there. Jeffrey Epstein, where is he? Alive or dead? And when I say dead, he's dead through some means.
Yes.
That's what I mean. And I know a few people have complained they can't see the video, so keep the YouTube up and keep the entropy open so you can interact in entropy but still watch us. A few people are have got the hang of it, and I see a few more people coming on. Now, I'll go through the list because it's amazing how much we actually know about Epstein's suicide. Yes.
Yeah, this is just the dot points that you made, and I'm like, it's incredible.
So he first attempted suicide on July 23rd, and that was just a day after the Daily Beast broke that Jeffrey Epstein went to the White House when Bill Clinton was president. And everyone was saying, well, that's a coincidence, and they also couldn't believe that his suicide failed.
Yeah, Hillary's got to hire about a thug, doesn't she? Yes.
But you can just imagine the whole, elite inner circle just getting together in their dark room at their big ring-shaped table and just going, "We have got to get rid of this guy." He just has so many powerful friends. I mean, people like Richard Dawkins now are on the list of people who've flown on the Lolita Express, and Steven Pinker, high-flying academics, and one of the science dudes who people love. He's is he a neuroscientist? I can't remember. I haven't watched much of his material or read anything, but he's a very, one of those pop scientists, personalities that I think he's probably loosely associated with the intellectual dark web. I know he's been on, Rubin and Rogan and all of those sorts of shows. So, but yeah, there's people from all different elite circles who are associated in varying degrees with Epstein. And I mean, obviously, if you were a buddy of Epstein's, you'd be wanting to distance yourself as far as possible because you're either involved in his evil shenanigans or you're going to be implicated in them at some point.
Okay, so if
this list,
he already attempted suicide once, and then on Saturday evening, Australian time, which was early Saturday morning in New York, he successfully committed suicide. And we were told that he was supposed to be on suicide watch after his first suicide attempt, but then we later learned he was taken off suicide watch for some unknown reason. First, it was reported that there was a camera malfunction, but then we learnt the cameras weren't pointed on his actual cell, which means that the Big Brother house has more cameras than a maximum security prison with some high-profile, dangerous prisoners in it.
Mm-hmm.
That's totally plausible.
You keep going through this list.
Yeah.
It just gets worse.
Yeah. So his cellmate, he was supposed to have a cellmate, was transferred out Friday night. Yep. So nobody saw him suicide. And the prison guards who were supposed to be watching him falsified logs to say that they were watching him when they weren't. And turns out one wasn't even a qualified correctionals officer. And then we finally got the autopsy.
It's just Fredo hanging out at the jail, right?
They wouldn't send Fredo to do this job.
Seems like they did, though.
The first time, yeah.
Yeah.
We got the results of the autopsy. I'm surprised we were allowed to see the autopsy, which did show marks around his neck, like his neck was broken, which suicide is capable of, but it's more common with strangulation.
Yes, not paper sheets.
Yes, well, because in prison, you're supposed to have paper sheets, which is impossible to hang yourself from, and there's supposed to be nothing on the roof where you can hang yourself from. But he managed to hang himself with sheets which you can hang from.
I get the feeling that Tim doesn't believe the the official story.
That makes Tim and every other person in the world, apart from the New York Times and the ABC
and Vox.
Yeah, and Vox.
Well,
yeah.
I also
and so of course now they're talking about making conspiracy theories into a federal terror crime in the United States.
Yeah.
Fancy that.
I noticed that on Sky News Australia, they were saying, oh, there's probably some rational explanation for it. And I actually saw a few libertarians say this as well, that it's just always government incompetence. And so in this case, everything that
sounds
could
like libertarian
go wrong,
incompetence.
So in this situation, everything that could go wrong did go wrong. I mean, things always go wrong, but for everything to go wrong...
Yeah. Yeah. Well, keep reading through this list. It's an incredible list.
Yeah. So the suicide was posted on 4chan half an hour before it was broken by the mainstream media, which, well, I'm not particularly worried about because, the mainstream media, they're entitled to the information first. Like, I'm glad 4chan broke it before the mainstream media.
Yeah.
Like, good on them.
Yeah. Have a cry about it, Fredo.
Yeah. What? The 4chan scooped us.
You guys aren't even journalists.
All right. So what else have I got on this list? We have access to his unredacted black book.
It's amazing.
Which has all the contacts in it now.
Have they named names?
Yeah, it's got all the names in it. Good. And when I say unredacted, it also includes like phone numbers as well.
Whoa.
Well, not everyone in that book is by definition a child sex offender, but had some sort of...
But if their phone numbers are there, I guarantee you everyone in that book has been getting a lot of text messages in the last couple of days.
Because, the reason the lefties like Cenk Uygur and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez are calling for investigation because they know that Trump had a relationship with him and they've all got Trump derangement syndrome. It's like, haha, now we can get him. And they say that because the prison, the Manhattan Correctional Facility, was under the jurisdiction of the Metropolitan Correctional it was under the jurisdiction of the Federal Bureau of Prisons, which is the Department of Justice, Attorney General William Barr, that it's Trump's responsibility. But Trump never went to the pedophile island. Bill Clinton did. He flew on the Lolita Express 26 times, often without his Secret Service detail.
Yeah, you don't just dismiss
Yeah,
your detail.
and I noticed that the ABC, I told you, I think I mentioned on my show actually, that ABC that evening, they showed that Jeffrey Epstein was connected to Donald Trump because there's footage of them partying together, but not Bill Clinton.
Yes, they were.
And
And
you could even do a search for Bill Clinton Lolita Express, and
Yep.
the images that come up were Trump with Epstein.
Yes. But this is
So transparent. And Google has just been exposed in the last 24 hours as well, like the next level of Project Veritas's expose on Google's algorithm diddling has come out, and it's all consistent with their policies that they will control the narrative, as much as they need to for a better, brighter future for the whole world to not be evil.
Well, the algorithms have broke this week. Because on Twitter, I'd say about half an hour after the suicide was reported, already Clinton body count was trending on Twitter. Because I think somebody totaled it up that this is the 56th associate of the Clintons who's mysteriously died. And now I noticed an article, I read it on my show by Vox, who said, the Clinton body count can easily be debunked because they've been explained in official reports as suicides, plane crashes, and heart attacks.
But wasn't there a car crash or two in there as well?
Yeah, there's been a bit of everything.
Yeah, pretty sure a strong enough taser can induce a heart attack as well.
That is actually a great one. If you've ever seen the movie, I think it's called Cry Freedom. It's made. It was a communist production made about Stephen Mbiko, who was a communist in South Africa, who like all the SJWs of the time were like they loved him, like him and Mandela. It was them, and so. The movie tells the story of how like the police got him basically, and he died in an ambulance van being transferred from one hospital to another in another city. And so at the end of the movie, like they roll in the credits, they roll all the names of all these supposed freedom fighters in South Africa, i.e. terrorists, who have died while in prison, and like it lists all the reasons for death, like slipped in shower, attacked in prison, heart attack, car crash, and so it's making the point, all of these reasons, they're absolute rubbish. So again, there's a historical precedent for this.
And we learnt that his second successful suicide was just a day after the court documents, which relate to the lawsuits by Epstein's victims, that Mike Cernovich, the independent journalist, managed to get unsealed, which pretty graphically implicated Prince Andrew and Epstein's UK procurer, Maxwell. I can't remember the first name.
Madame.
Yes.
Is it Ghislaine Maxwell?
Yes.
Yeah.
Who we don't know. They haven't been able to locate at the moment.
Really?
So we're actually learning
maybe she committed suicide or had a heart attack or something like that. Yeah.
But yeah, we were just learning to actually learn some of the lure detail, and then another suicide happens.
Yeah, I've got to say,
Shut him up.
It's amazing. Like the people who I've known who've been suicidal, like these suicidal tendencies generally last about 5 days, and then they're fine, and they never think about it again. Like, yeah, it's just that's like time and time again. That's always how it goes.
I think everyone
they never like over the course of years are in and out of hospital, or just like every time you see them, they're never like even worse than the time before. Like it's just flash in a pan.
I think everyone's made a pact this week that they're not going to ever kill themselves, and so if you're found suicided, then you know it's sus.
The only way I'm going early is in a hail of bullets.
So I noticed that RV Yemeni posted that Tommy has no intention of committing suicide, so if he does, then you know something's up.
Well, and this raises the importance of people of prominence, need to have a dead man switch in place, as we've seen happen in the past, where somebody is lined up, or there's some process or some chain of events put into process that, if you wind up dead, all of this shit gets dropped on WikiLeaks or dropped on Project Veritas or whatever it is, that these people are exposed. And as yet, nothing has emerged from Epstein. So it surprises me that he wouldn't have had a dead man switch in place. But it's also not beyond the realm of possibility that the people who have offed him, found the dead man switch and prevented it from activating somehow. Who knows? But, this story, we are never going to know everything. That's the tragedy here. We're never going to know everything that he knew.
But because the whole world thinks this is bullshit, it's actually fueled information that wouldn't previously come out, because what the elites and the big tech companies really wanted to do is, Officer Barbara, all right, move along, people, nothing to see here, and then read the suicide note. I'm very sorry that I procured those girls for sex. I acted alone and won't do it again. Well, there you go, case closed.
Yeah. Except they've already got a safe load of CD-ROMs, I believe, or DVDs that have video evidence of something. So I want to know when that's going to be unsealed. And personally, I would like I'd like there to be dental records checked so that we're 100% sure that the person they just performed an autopsy on is actually Epstein.
Well, somebody amazingly managed to get footage of Epstein's dead body being wheeled out, and so people have been analysing Epstein's
allegedly dead body.
It actually had like one of those bags being held for him, which you only use if someone still has a chance of making it, basically. Ryan Fletcher pointed that out, like he spotted it throughout.
Although he wasn't declared dead until he was at the hospital.
I thought they said that he was found dead in his cell. That's what the story was.
But I think the medical declaration occurred in the hospital, and oftentimes that's just because they wait until there's a doctor there to verify it. He may well have already been dead.
Yep.
But there's also the possibility that they just wheeled him out to kill him in the hospital.
Yes.
Who bloody knows?
So make sure
if they can do it to General Patton, they can do it to Jeffrey Epstein.
Yeah. Whatever they're telling us, the truth is a lot stranger and more fucked up. No doubt.
Tell us what you think in our entropy poll, whether Epstein's dead or alive. I'll put the link there again. Keep
Rusty
talking.
McClay says, dead or alive, he had some assistance. That's true. And Matty is chiming in the question saying, when is David going to get a wife and make white babies?
Are you going to read the other question out as well?
What's the other question?
I don't see it.
Oh, because I accidentally reset the chat.
Ah. Well, I guess that's a no.
I'll make the poll again. I did this last week.
Ah, okay. We're doing it all again.
So why don't we talk about the breaking news that's taken everyone's attention off the global story of Epstein, at least for a moment.
Address?
Bill and address. That's just weird. But no.
Oh yeah, we've got to. We can't finish this topic without showing it.
My apologies, James.
We got it. Yeah. Let's do it.
All right.
Brace yourselves, people.
Oh fuck.
Dave wasn't ready.
Oh,
whoa!
There we go.
That's all the Clintons.
Yeah, so it's Bill Clinton in Hillary Clinton's dress, which is, I don't know what to make of that.
Unbelievable.
And that's the thing. This is not fake news. This actually happened.
Because now that he's dead, they can go through his property.
That's just
well, and the mainstream media, who we're quite accustomed to, covering this sort of weird shit up, are verifying it and reporting it, and it's either a very wonderfully planned hoax, taking the mickey out of everyone involved in reporting it, or it's legit. But yeah, I saw the photograph that was taken through the window, and there were other photos taken through the window of all of his computer assets and that sort of thing being seized and desks being left empty. So they're scouring his apartment and his mansions and his island and all of it. The other weird part was before this alleged suicide, was that he had a dome on the top of his what I can only presume was his child sacrifice temple to Moloch on his island. there was a dome on the top that, amazingly, after his arrest, disappeared. Did you guys see that?
I didn't see that it
No.
disappeared.
It was like a square building, and there was a before photo, and then I mean I have not verified the timing. It could just be tinfoil hat stuff, but amazingly, this very Islamic looking dome on the top of this building just disappeared back to a regular old square building.
Wow.
I wonder
Right.
if it was launched into orbit with all the evidence and the bones of the
They'll
their
fire
victims.
it into the sun. Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah. I'm just on that picture of the dress, the painting of Bill Clinton in a dress. Like, where do we know whereabouts in his apartment it was? Like, was it in some secret compartment or just hanging on like a regular wall?
No, somebody photographed it through a window, so it was obviously on proud display.
So lots of people have gone into Jeffrey Epstein's place.
Yeah.
So lots of people would have seen that painting. Yet this is the first time any of us have heard about Jeffrey Epstein having a painting of Bill Clinton in a dress. I'm pretty sure, like, if he'd had a painting of Donald Trump in a dress, this would have been public knowledge a long time ago.
Maybe Bill just put it there at the same time that they offed him, just as a
he's like, hey,
farewell gift.
it's like, hey, I've been trying to get my ass on the internet all this time.
All right. Well, you wanted to go on to the next topic, James, so we'll let you.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, I want to talk about what happened in Sydney. I think I've probably only got time for this one more, but I think it's the most important one to touch on because it's, again, we're seeing all kinds of finger pointing and people, blaming various factors in what's gone on. But why don't you give us the lowdown on the facts, and then we can cast our conjectures after that, Tim.
So the initial reports were that a white man was running around the Sydney CBD with a knife attempting to stab people, and he was screaming Allah Akbar. This was reported by multiple mainstream media outlets, which it was called at the time, because it was a breaking news story, unhelpful journalism. So Laura Jays, who's one of the daytime Sky presenters, she was, I should go to my story. She was attacked by this random Muslim writer, Saman Shad, who said this is really unhelpful. And I noticed a lot of Muslims on social media were saying, "Oh, he didn't pronounce it properly, so there's no way that he's a real Muslim." And
Right.
he was thankfully before he stabbed anyone else, he was apprehended or citizen's arrest using a milk crate and some chairs from a cafe by three
Absolute legends.
cishet white male British working tourists who
Yeah, there was a lot of toxic masculinity in that group of heroes who pinned that motherfucker down. God bless them.
So they held him until the police arrived, and unlike a trolley man in Victoria, who they arrested, after that, the New South Wales police said these three were heroes. Then they found...
Too right.
Even though he shouted Allahu Akbar, apparently they found a USB stick on him. We'd had material related to the Christchurch mosque attack and US mass shootings, and so the same people who said, "Oh, you shouldn't have reported Allahu Akbar," said, "Oh, it's a white supremacist one."
Yep.
But then we learnt that and now we've got to say alleged stabber, because he's been charged, Mert Ney, he was of Turkish-Cypriot background. Now they're conflicting reports about his religiosity, but the only religion he's associated with is Islam. Now, I mentioned that he was described as white at the time. I looked at the footage, and he was clearly not white. I don't know how people could say that. He clearly had a sort of, what do you call it, a tanned complexion.
Dusky?
Well, it depends on what you mean by white.
Because we know there's
It's such a
thing.
broad category. White just means anyone we hate today.
Yeah.
So
Far white.
So what else that we learnt the next day that he just pleaded guilty to possessing a prohibited weapon after police found a knuckle duster at his home. He was wanted before the rampage on a domestic violence allegation after his sister claimed that he punched her in the face. Now, his sister Yazil, she disowned her brother and apologised to the victims. There were two victims. I just want to get their names right. It's way back up here in the story. Yeah, so Linda Bow, 41, she was stabbed in the back during the rampage, but before the rampage started at 2 p.m., Michaela Dunn, 24, she was found stabbed to death at a nearby apartment. She was a sex worker that had an appointment to see him at 1:30 p.m.
Oh wow, what a nightmare! And I read that he'd slit her throat. I don't know if that's accurate.
Probably. Yeah, probably don't need to, go into that much detail.
Maybe we do. Yeah.
Well, we need. Yeah, I mean, it's important to understand what an animal he was.
Yeah. Fair enough.
And obviously, the randomness of the second attack. Is there an up-to-date report on the condition of the second woman who was stabbed? Is she okay?
Yeah, she's okay. I
think it was a shoulder wound, right?
Yeah. I read this story yesterday. So as far as I knew then, she was still alive. The reason why, I didn't want you to actually go into that detail is because we're already getting enough flack for listing her occupation as a sex worker, because it's been argued by sex worker rights advocates that by mentioning what her job is, whenever someone's murdered, or you always mention their occupation, that by saying sex worker, we're subliminally implying she asked for it because of her occupation, which we're not. If you check the comments on social media, everyone's saying what a tragedy for her family. Yes. There's been nothing but tributes for her. She was the victim of this savage animal. Our thoughts go out. There's nobody who's saying that, she was working in a dangerous... No one is saying that. I mean, that's the usual sort of, leftist victim mentality, is that they sort of want to make it about a political
shaming her
like
somehow.
That. Yeah.
Well, there's no need to shame her, to also point out the fact that any woman who goes into a closed room with a strange man for any reason, be it for money or sex or whatever, she's taking a punt. She's taking a risk that he might just be a normal, average, whorehouse visiting dude, or he may be a psychopath about to slit her throat. And I suspect that this event is going to make a lot of sex workers and other women, think twice about putting themselves in those situations. That's not about shaming them. That's a separate issue altogether. It's about common sense, Why would you put yourself in that risky situation if you don't have to? Roxanne, you don't have to put on the red light.
Yeah. This is also... It's also a bait and switch, because this is how the left and the mainstream media complicate the issue. Because we saw straight away, okay, this guy has yelled Allahu Akbar while he's stabbed several people in public in Sydney. Terrorism, Islamic terrorism, case closed. But we're not allowed to say it. It's unhelpful, and then they just keep adding element after element after element, like mental illness, domestic violence. He killed a whore. And so they talk about all of this stuff. Like on the ABC, I was listening to this lady who literally and unironically used the expression whorephobic. And so she went on a big rant about it's just about how we need to normalize the idea that a woman will have sex for money. And so they use that to talk about something else other than what were this guy's motivations. Yet when it's a white man who does it, they just go straight to the fact that he's white. Like the ABC last week, when they were talking about the Dayton and the El Paso shootings, they pointed out this is the latest in a spate of mass shootings by young white men.
Yeah, yeah.
And
So they don't
they
mind
just go straight
attributing
there.
the motives to race,
Yes.
or if they're even remotely supportive of Trump, as the El Paso shooter was in his alleged manifesto, and as Tarrant was in New Zealand. These people, if they're even remotely positive about Trump, they immediately go, it's white nationalism.
Yeah.
Ideology is the reason for this crime. But when the guy is an imported individual from another culture who is shouting the cry of every Islamic jihadist ever,
Yeah.
it's not ideology. It's other things. It's other things.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, we see this hypocrisy and double standard every single time. And, nobody buys it anymore except the absolutely insane.
Yeah. And just to go on a little bit more about the conversation that I was listening to on the way here. So they were the panel was talking about how we need to essentially normalize prostitution. And then one guy started talking about how, he was saying, we've got to be careful. And he sort of cucked a little bit. He's saying, I know this is a little bit politically incorrect, but we've got to understand that in a multicultural society such as Australia, there are going to be different opinions on prostitution. So you start talking about this and you're going to get a lot of pushback from some people. So he wanted to go there, but he didn't want to actually openly talk about it. It's just that point where I always go, okay, this is why we need to talk about race. This is why we need to talk about religion. This is why we need to talk about this stuff. And yeah, the left is doing everything they can to deflect from that.
Later that evening, the conscience of Australia, Waleed Ali, they were having a discussion about it, the project panel, and
did Lisa Wilkinson suggest that we need to educate men again?
Oh, she wasn't on the panel that night. If I just go,
give it time.
Here we go. We've got to find it here. Oh yes,
I mean, it will come up.
Yeah,
it will come up from somebody like her who will say, eventually she'll go, "What's the common factor with all of these maniacs?
Okay, I've got it now.
They're all men. It's a man problem."
Yeah, that's what the feminists said. Oh, yeah, sure. The three guys that stopped him were male, but the whole thing was started by a male. That was their argument. That's why, Clementine Ford, she was quite triggered, saying that, how dare you say that toxic masculinity saved the day?
Well, I can assure you no toxic males are going to save her. Yeah.
All right, so...
Now, they probably will. That's the thing, is that, it'll if she was in a situation, no man, none of us would actually stand by and let her be harmed, even though we hate her, no decent man would stand by and let a maniac go on stabbing random people, no matter who they are. And, these were white Western men who came to the rescue of, Asian women who were attacked? The one who was taken away on the stretcher, she looked Asian. I'm not sure about the sex worker who was killed, but, quite likely Asian.
Those men saved more women, potentially, from being stabbed, so...
Yeah, heroism transcends all of those categories of race and ideology and all of that. So, it's just, but they will always want, the mad feminists will always want to chalk it up as being a man problem. It's toxic masculinity and it's every man's fault, because that just gives us an excuse to go on hating men.
All right, so I've got the quotes now. So Carrie Bickmore, she said about the extensive video footage, I mean, it obviously helps with investigations and stuff, but seeing it all unfold, I don't know. And then Waleed said, we're being traumatized by watching it. I'm not sure that trauma helps us in any way. Does it really? Can you think of a way it would? Now, Waleed Ali, wanting to prevent the public from seeing footage of a man yelling Allahu Akbar while carrying a knife, he wants to stop us seeing that.
He seems to have another motivation there.
Yeah, that's what a lot of people...
Who's this us that he's speaking about anyway?
Well, he's our conscience. Waleed Ali, don't you know?
Right, yeah. We Australians, yeah. I'll do my own thinking.
Yeah.
Thanks, Waleed. I don't need you to hold my hand or give me any guidance of any kind, mate.
Waleed, he did. He's supposed to be our national conscience, but he did say, as I was watching the vision, I tried to imagine myself in it, and I don't think there was a chance of me approaching. I reckon.
So he's saying that he's not going to be a hero.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's admitting his cowardice. Yep. Good. Yeah. Yep. Finally something true.
Every now and then, someone like him accidentally tells the truth. It's amazing.
Yeah.
So you know, like if you're around, you know, Waleed Ali, like, you know, you're on your own.
Yeah. Ladies, take note, you know.
But we've seen this sort of like, because we were talking about it before with how the internet and the elites, they tried to suppress so much of the information getting out of Epstein as possible. And then we have people saying, because they didn't want Laura Jays to say that he said Allah Akbar. So they basically, and Laura Jays, like, she rightfully said, like, should I censor my journalism? But that's what they want. They don't want unhelpful, inconvenient facts coming out. Yep. And so that's why Waleed Ali said, oh, you know, we should only get approved footage out.
Yeah.
And so this has all started, like, obviously because Brent and Tarrant live streamed the Christchurch massacre. There's been this push to crack down on live streaming, but as we saw on Tuesday, everyone captured pretty much from like every angle, like what happened, and so the public was in no doubt about what was actually took place, and so misinformation.
The elites are freaking out on all fronts because they are realizing that they are losing control of the narrative. And it's, you know, we're in a world that's ideologically dominated by the millennials now, our generation, and Gen Z, these kids, these teenagers, these young guys and girls who are coming up, they see right through the bullshit. They don't buy it at all. And you know, the current elites are terrified of this generation and the free flow of information and ideas and opinions that they exchange between them with no gatekeepers whatsoever. And they want to shut it down, but they can't. You know, they will have to force us through some catastrophic war into a pre-electric primitive society again in order to stop the flow of information. The cat's out of the bag and they're losing control of the narrative. Yeah. So it's kind of, although I, you know, abhor the horror that's led to these moments, I abhor everything that Epstein's done to put him in our field of interest, and I abhor this crime that's happened in Sydney. There is some joy and hope to be found in the amount that the elites are squirming about all of this stuff, mostly because the people are getting red-pilled en masse every day now.
Yeah. People
are getting their red pills even though they didn't want them. The red pills are being freely distributed, and it's a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
All right, we're saying goodbye to you now, James. We've got Matty, who is eager to come on. So thank you for joining us. We didn't get to, well, there's an article that you wrote which was quite insightful, but we'll have to get to that another time.
We'll do it another time. Yeah, no worries. All right, thanks, guys. Great fun, and have fun with Matty.
Cheerio.
Thank you,
chaps. Bye.
And a reminder, we are on Anthropathy. I'll put the link in the description again, so you can ask us questions. You can vote in our poll. We seem to be getting, well, Matty's polluted the... you can ask us these yourself when you get on in a moment, but there's one from Zero Tolerance. Was he a Tarrant supporter or an Islamic terrorist? Well, he was a white nationalist. That's not in dispute.
Well, yeah, it is funny that they're trying to say, this Muslim guy who yelled Allahu Akbar while he stabbed people in public had the video of Tarrant like at the mosque. Like maybe he had that as inspiration, like he wanted to do a revenge attack.
I was going to say something, but that Skype music is so loud.
Should dance.
Answer the phone!
Answer the bloody phone, Matty. Where are you? Come on, man. What's going on? Hey, Matty's calling you. Matty's calling you. He's having trouble. While you're setting that up, just... now you're just trying again. Here we go.
There you are.
That's the Unshackled nightclub.
Because the last message I saw, Matty, was call me. So I thought I had to call you.
What's going on?
All right, I'll wait for him to call back.
So it's interesting the way that they were trying to do essentially social enforcement of self-censorship, social enforcement of censoring the facts. It's similar to the way the Google algorithm works.
Hello?
So I had the wrong Skype version open.
Oh, you're a bit loud.
Is it?
I'll turn you down from my end. So yeah, that's just I think a bit loud.
It's boomer tech here at the Unshackled. Yeah.
All right, that might be better.
You need to get a producer. How's that?
A producer.
Yeah. So I can call in and then you can just switch me over.
Yeah, well, you know, this is still a lot high tech than, you know, what's XYZ Live.
And it starts the Matty versus Tim show.
You walked right into that one.
Somebody got you there as well there, Dave.
I don't
Wouldn't
care.
be taking that. You don't care. That's why.
Oh, we go. Less distortion now. That's better.
Our show's more fun than his.
Yeah, we have a lot of fun. You're in your Hawthorne jacket, Matty.
Yeah, no, it's not a jacket. It's a bathrobe, you know, like a robe.
Oh, you just come out of the shower.
No, it's just comfortable.
Mm.
And what's professionalism?
Now, I wanted to, because we had a question about Tarrant, because it was...
I have a question, actually, for Dave, and you never let him answer. You do that every time, Tim. You don't.
Yeah, well, now, yeah, the floor is yours.
I already asked it. It was in, you asked him, and he didn't get to answer.
All right, answer.
You are fake news, Matty.
I'm fake. That's not.
You are fake news, Matty. No,
so
no.
you've got a wife and like all these white children.
Yeah, I've got 17 babies.
Hey,
I've got 17.
you got 17 babies.
17 babies. Yeah. Why do you think I tell all the dad
Yes.
jokes?
17 babies.
Yeah.
For the same girl, or
Nah, of course not.
17 different girls.
Yep.
Hey, that's not
You're
very
fake
nice
news,
thing to
Matty.
do.
You're fake news, Matty.
All right,
Fake news.
I'll finish my point now. So it was revealed this week that Tarrant was able to write a reply to a letter that was sent to him by a Russian and send it out of his prison in New Zealand back to the guy in Russia.
Oh, yes.
And so Jacinda Ardern has said, you know, this shouldn't have been allowed to happen, and it's quite extraordinary that it did happen.
Do we have a picture of the letter?
We shouldn't, because
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Because of that thing with the thing.
yeah,
Okay.
like like it's floating around the internet. I mean, media are quoting parts of it, but
Of course, they're only quoting parts of it.
yeah, but you know, of course, they never show you the sort of like the full version. All right, so what's our next topic now? That is, well, the China discussion. Well, obviously, it's been fueled by what's happening in Hong Kong, where tanks are now on standby going into the special administrative region of the People's Liberation
I heard that
Army.
was just a drill.
Well, they're sort of like they're there, but you know, obviously, it's not Tiananmen Square 2 at the moment. And so it was all kicked off in Australia last week by an op-ed by Andrew Hastie in the Fairfax paper, just talking about the threat that China poses and how we need to be prepared from it. And so that really sort of spooked out a lot of politicians. What are you doing, Matty?
Someone in chat asked me to give you rabbit ears.
All right.
They asked nicely. I can't say no. I need you to move over a little bit.
You're supposed to only do it if it's a super chat. You know the rules.
Good point. Send a super chat and I'll do it.
Yeah,
Got
super
the
chat.
smartest minds on the alt-right.
You know, they're making you do stuff for free.
I thought it was funny though.
Matty was just doing that for kicks, yeah?
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, oh, that sounds like fun. I'll do that.
Yeah, the Hasty article was a really interesting one because he was talking about making sure that you stay up to date with the latest tactics. He was talking about the fact that the French in World War II, they still had a World War I mindset. They built the Maginot Line to basically stop any frontal assault by the Germans, but by masses of troops. But the Germans had tanks. They went through the Low Countries and they surrounded the French, and they didn't even bother about the Maginot Line. So when Hastie was referring to National Socialist Germany, he was referring to it in the fact that the French had the wrong tactics against the Germans. And so he's saying, look, he followed on by talking directly about the Soviet Union and saying that
Stalin.
He was actually talking about the Cold War, and he's saying, look, the key to understanding communists is you have to understand how communists think. You have to understand that they work in the long term, and they actually believe the Marxist principles which they say that they believe. They don't work as a realist actor like a Western country.
You shouldn't think of China how we think of ourselves. That's what he was saying. Which, I don't know, it seemed pretty common sense to me, but it really sort of triggered politicians from both sides, because I think it was Simon Birmingham who said, he should have, thought before he spoke. And I think the West Australian Pembroke, Mark McGowan slapped him down as well. But Peter Dutton, the Home Affairs Minister, said, this is a discussion that we need to have. And so did Richard Miles, the new Labor deputy.
Yeah.
So,
well, the thing is that the Chinese, they didn't say anything about National Socialist Germany. The Chinese said this is Cold War. He's stuck in a Cold War mindset. So they understood that he was talking about communism. It was the Australian media made a big deal about the reference to National Socialism. And so the point that I made in my piece was that we are actually stuck in World War II thinking. We're stuck... World
War One thinking.
Yeah, essentially. We're stuck on a Maginot Line in our own minds, in that the moment somebody even hints at Nazis, everybody goes crazy. All rational thinking stops, and you are not able to analyze the situation. Hasty made some really good comments and just a really important policy point about how we should approach China. And we've lost an opportunity to actually talk about that and change the way that we approach them, because people have gone crazy about Nazis.
Oh, I don't think so. I disagree with that. I think the conversation is taking place because it's dawned on, I think, a lot of politicians and a lot of the media that Australia is in, and we have been for a while, a really shit sandwich when it comes to China.
Yeah. I will actually agree on that, Matt. I think the media have a history of missing the point on foreign policy.
Yeah, because they just want, their headlines.
Yeah. That is a strong point. Please continue.
Yeah, so we're dependent on China for trade, but they are in the Asia Pacific region. They influence Southeast Asian nations and Pacific Island nations. I mean, everyone was sort of outraged that Scott Morrison gave the Pacific Island nations $500 million to fight climate change, but come on, we all knew what that money was really for. It was to, prevent Chinese influence in the region. They just made it so it was climate money. Come on, don't.
I actually spoke to someone today on, I think they were on my Gab, trying to say that, I can't remember who it was, but they tried to tell me that they didn't think that if China entered Hong Kong, it counted it as an invasion, because he spoke to two people from Hong Kong and they said that they felt like they were China. Just politely reminded him that 1 million people out of 7 million protested on the streets, and they're still going. A lot of them are.
So you're talking to Chinese trolls, are you? Like Chinese Hasbro
CCP
trolls?
Yeah. CCP trolls. They love it. Yeah. They love it. No, I had to explain to him that people from Hong Kong are most definitely different to China. China is not Hong Kong, and Hong Kong isn't China. They use a different alphabet and they speak a different language, but it used to be a Chinese region. I mean, it's not uncommon in China for people in different areas to speak a different language. They all speak different dialects, but it is different for them to use a different alphabet. It's a very similar alphabet, but you wouldn't be able to tell the difference unless you knew what you were looking for. But it is a different alphabet.
So the people in Hong Kong are different to China. Like, you've made that point really well before. Like, it's what we're seeing here is it's like a nationalist uprising as much as anything else.
In a lot of ways, they wouldn't call it that, but it is not in the way that we would define it anyway. But it is.
Again, I'm using those Eurocentric terms to discuss China again. Yeah.
You are imposing your whiteness on them as
Yeah.
the professors.
Well,
I'll give them a bit of toxic masculinity to boot.
Toxic masculinity, toxic whiteness.
Yeah.
Well, Tibet is officially part of China.
Yeah.
Like, well, China's actually really diverse. Like, it's not just like one blob of people. It's like it's all these different.
I like to think of them as blobs.
Like
It's like
ethnic
Europe.
groups. Yeah. We have got a super chat.
It's like it's almost as diverse as Europe in terms of ethnicity and language. The only thing that's common is government. So Iron Fist of the government, and the alphabet is the same alphabet on the mainland.
So the
everywhere.
CCP is like the EU,
the
huh?
same thing. Sorry?
So the CCP is like the EU.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's what the EU want to be.
Yeah.
Except the difference between the CCP and the EU is that in China they speak different dialects, and like I said, they use the same alphabet. They all have the same alphabet. So one symbol in the Chinese language means the same thing, even if it's a different word in a different dialect. That's different for Cantonese, though. Cantonese is an entirely different alphabet. It is, like I said, it's very similar, and it does, I think it might cross. I can't remember. It might cross over in parts, but it's a completely different language and it's a completely different alphabet as far as I can remember.
Now we have got a super chat. Yes.
Yeah, you're gonna have to move over. You're gonna have to move over and go down a little bit.
Oh, I'm just gonna read it out. Like, I'm not gonna like misread super chats. It's from Radical Islamophobe, and it's for $10 US. It says, Matty, give Tim and Dave rabbit ears. Well, you already did it, so you're just being paid after the fact.
No, I didn't. You're not in the right spot. See, you're gonna deny the super chat his satisfaction.
Well, because I said like you had to pay for it, so.
This is why Dave's cooler than you, Tim. Dave would do it.
I know what you're trying to do, Matty.
What am I trying to do?
Yeah, so we've had ASIO warning our politicians for quite a while. You know, you've got to be aware of how, you know, the Chinese, they use various front groups to infiltrate our politics, and this is why the politicians they're sort of quite spooked by this China talk, because like it's not that, you know, they're deliberately doing the bidding of the Chinese, but there's been multiple Four Corners episodes of politicians having photo snaps with like Chinese businessmen who've turned out to be linked to the Chinese Communist Party. But then it was revealed by the ABC yesterday that the member for Chisholm, Liberal Gladys Liu, and her Labour opponent in the federal election, Jennifer Yang, they were both honorary chairs of the United Chinese Commerce Association of Australia, and that is linked to the World Trade United Foundation, which Liu was a member of, and that's linked to China's United Front, which aims to advance China's political influence in the region. So that's quite. That's quite a web.
So you're saying that the Chinese Communist Party was backing both sides of in the Chisholm election.
Well,
Whoever got in, it's Kang and Kodos, you know? Like you either get one CCP front woman or another CCP front woman.
Yes, it was, and like that Chisholm, that's the electorate not too far from where we are at the moment.
Yeah, just down the road.
And we have commented on the Chisholm election before, well, because it is quite a...
It's been invaded by Chinese.
Well, my position on it was, like, I would hate for it that to be the member for Chisholm in the future, you have to be Chinese. That's.
I think it's a given. Yeah.
But this.
Have you been to Chisholm before?
But this.
It's a given. It's a given. Yeah.
But this is a.
It's China. It's China. They're all. You go. It used to be Cantonese, but it's obviously more mainland Chinese now. So, it's. Yeah,
but this
that suburb's lost, and it's funny because the Liberals and the ALP, it's just how ridiculous they are and how hypocritical and clueless. Well, either clueless or willing to brazenly lie to people. They are. They both put up Chinese candidates for Chisholm because Chisholm is. I believe it's actually majority Chinese, or at least it's coming close to majority Chinese. So they put these two Chinese candidates up. Oh, but you know, we're multicultural. All races are the same. There's no such thing as immigrant preference. Shut your mouth, white supreme pizza. You know, all that. They'll say the same thing, but then they'll put a Chinese candidate. Both parties will put a Chinese candidate up in Chisholm. It's like you're sending mixed messages. This is a classic case of
they're walking red pills, aren't they? Do you know that there's an analogy here? So we've been fighting a so-called war on terror for the last 18 years, where we go into Muslim countries and tear the place up. Meanwhile, like, we have increased immigration from Muslim countries in all that time. So in doing so, we've imported Islamic terrorism into Australia. So, like, what was the whole point of that? When we look at China, just imagine that at the end of 1945, the National Socialist regime kept going and then was still in power today. And if we were talking about them in terms of, like, they're liberalizing their trade regime, they're increasing the standard of living for their people, we should engage them rather than trying to have sanctions against them. Do you think that the establishment would allow that? But then now consider that the Chinese Communist Party killed 10 times as many people as the National Socialists are alleged to have killed. But the way they're talking about it, we should be engaging with China. Let's bring in hundreds of thousands of people from China into Australia. Then we find out that, like, 2 of the candidates have links to this political party, which is still in power, and this political party is the biggest murderer of the 20th century, and they're still in power.
It's all NWO. It's all NWO stuff. They're all controlled by the same cabal. Don't think that China are any different to the rest of the world. They are controlled by the exact same people. They are actually in a huge amount of debt, don't they? I have heard someone say the other day that China weren't in debt. They're not
David Hilton,
They're not in debt to America.
Okay.
But they've just spent the last 20 years basically printing money. There's just money all over the place. They're just as much embroiled in the credit Ponzi scheme as we are. They're controlled by the same cabal. I mean, I would say that they're controlled by the same archons. They probably have their own satanic rituals in the middle of Beijing as well. They probably go down to the Forbidden City and find where the old where the old concubines used to live, or
maybe that's where Jeffrey Epstein's dome has gone.
Who knows? I like how when Fox Higgins called it the temple to Moloch, because it certainly looks like a temple to that. But yeah, don't think that the Chinese Communist Party are any different to any of these other groups. Just because the Zog control isn't, or we'll call it the Zog control isn't as overt coming out of China. It's still there. It's still there. I mean, what's his name? Xi Jinping is the so-called dictator, and look, he's got nominal power over China.
President for life.
President for life, is dictator for life, essentially, is what he is. But he's still, they're operating under the same credit crunch system. They're all answer to the same Rothschild, Rockefeller, these same elite bloodline families, and they probably are bloodline families. Xi Jinping is almost certainly an occult member. You don't get to be that powerful unless you're part of the satanic occult parasitic cabal. It's the only way it happens. So they're the exact same cabal. They're operating under the exact same orders, and don't be surprised if the elite try to use, I don't want to call them the elite, the parasites try to use them to actually spark a conflict in the Pacific in order to stamp out the rising consciousness across the world. They're desperate. They are desperate. They're losing power. They know that they're losing power, because especially if you look at it from the perspective of archontic control, which is the way I look at it. I mean, other people don't look at it that way, but if you look at it from that perspective, it's it all makes sense that they would start this major conflict because they're losing control as a desperate to bring it back. You know, kind of a scorched earth policy. If we can't have it, then neither can you.
Well, that's how you get Epstein. That's how you get Epstein off the front page, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I do not be surprised at all if in the next few weeks we have another El Paso style shooting, which I think is a complete. I think it's nonsense. I believe the shooting actually happened. I just don't believe the official narrative. I think it was planned by a certain group of people, or the same cabal, or maybe even someone planning it with similar motivations. But I think it's still sort of in that satanic realm. I don't believe that this shooter was doing it for quote-unquote white nationalism. If you have a look at the guy doesn't even look white. I mean, give me a break. He looks less white than Tim. Come on. He's like...
What are you saying, Matty?
I thought we were talking about China going to war with China.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, anyway, so I went on a bit of a tangent.
Yeah. I'm going to bring...
My point is that it's all connected. It's all connected. And the rise of China is probably going to be used to start World War III. I think that's a likely scenario at this point.
I just want to bring up some photos of this ABC investigation because it's quite... this is the thing. So Gladys Liu, she gave her maiden speech in Parliament, and this is ScoMo. He said,
I'd love to be like really just really racist and like have a speech caption of her saying "Banzai," bonsai.
But how would that be Ray Ray? That'd be hilarious.
Because it's like she's Chinese, but she's saying a Japanese thing. You know, it'd just be brilliant.
But yes, ScoMo. He said how good is Gladys
racism
Liu?
doesn't exist. But yeah, he said how good is Gladys Liu.
Yeah. So
that would actually make a really good meme. You can actually make memes out of that, honestly.
Yeah, that's it. That's it.
So that's Gladys Liu and Jennifer Yang together. There they are in the same photo here.
I was going to say that the one above, like imagine the memes for this. It's like the one on the right's going, I don't know, something along the lines of, oh my God, the CCP is going to kill me.
Going down to this photo, this is when they're with the World Trade United Foundation. There's Jennifer Yang there, and there's Gladys Liu there.
And who are those other guys then?
I don't know.
Yeah, which one's the CCP?
Yeah. So this is a state MP, Bruce Atkinson. He's been tied up with a lot of these groups as well. He used to be president of the Victorian Legislative Council. He's denied that, you know, he's like doing anyone's bidding. This is a list here. Oh, that's Bruce Atkinson there. That's Jennifer Yang there. That's Gladys Liu there. Jennifer Yang there. That's another photo there. Oh yeah, this one here. So this is from 2015. Mr. Atkinson with Miss Liu, with a... No, that is not Jennifer Yang. Sorry, that is not.
But with a Chinese journalist.
Yeah, with a Chinese journalist.
Okay.
Yeah. So, like, picture tells 1,000 words. So,
there's always somebody who opens the gates.
Yeah. But that's it is strange that, like, because you see those photos of Yang and Liu, like spending like so much time before they became.
I think it's Kang and Con.
Like, sort of, like, I'm not like. Can you remember, like, when sort of like two,
Kang and Kodos, I mean,
two opponents for like a marginal seat of sort of like, seem to have had a good relationship.
Yeah, it's one of those red pills in just like up in everybody's faces.
We've lost Matty for a moment.
Yeah.
We thought we'd silenced you for a moment.
Yeah.
I turned my camera off. I had to send text messages and things.
Yeah.
It's like the Liu and Yang. It's just another nothing to see here. Like look the other way. Like it's entirely normal.
Yeah. We've got a few more topics to go. Is
let's
everyone
keep
happy
it going.
to keep going?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We covered World War III.
You're just silent now.
What about?
Oh well, we've got a few more topics. You're happy to power on.
Don't encourage him, Tim.
What? I said my piece. I don't care anymore about this topic.
We've got more topics. More topics. That's what I meant.
Yeah, you had a whole list of topics. So I was just going to let you do it.
Yeah, all right. So Julie Bishop, former foreign minister and deputy Liberal leader, she went on Andrew Denton, who used to be ABC darling. He's got this new show on Channel 7. where he interviews people, and his final guest for the show was Julie Bishop, and she's a born-again feminist now because she said politics won't change until there's 50% female MPs. She said she was, she wasn't taken seriously in the cabinet under Tony Abbott because she was the only woman, and she said that a man would say the exact same thing I did, and he would be listened to, and they'd all agree, even though I said it first.
Sounds like she's gunning for a plush SJW job.
Well, she's just been announced as new Chancellor of the Australian National University.
Yeah, okay. So she's saying all the things that she's expected to say. She's a whore.
And she called the misogyny against Julie Gillard grotesque in its brutality. And well, the lefty sisterhood, they haven't bought it. It's like, well, you didn't, speak up against it when it was your own side being mean to Julie Gillard. I remember when she was, during her early time as foreign minister, she was asked at the National Press Club, do you call yourself a feminist? And she's like, oh, it's not a word that's in my lexicon.
Yes. It'd also be interesting to get footage
Oh,
of...
what the hell, Matty? Like, just because we can't see you doesn't mean we can't hear you.
What?
No.
Greatest minds in the Australian alt-right.
Exactly. Well,
it'd be great to get footage of Bishop during Gillard's misogyny speech. When Tony Abbott's there and like he's not facing her, he's just looking the other way, and like what? It'd be interesting to see like if Julie Bishop is there, like along with all the other Liberal MPs, yelling at her, telling her to shut up, heckling her.
Alan Jones on Richard and Jones last night, he read out a serve that Julie Bishop gave Julie Gillard at the time, saying like she ran an incompetent government. Yeah, right. And Julie Bishop said, stabbed her leader in the back.
Yes. And
what did Julie Bishop do?
It seems to be a common trait among female politicians.
Yeah. So, a lot of people think that she's just salty. She only got 11 votes in the vote for Prime Minister, but she would have got more. But one of her allies, Christopher Pyne, encouraged his faction not to vote for her because if Julie Bishop got through to the second round up against Peter Dutton, then Dutton would win. So he urged his faction to vote for Scott Morrison for strategic purposes, so then he could go on and defeat Peter Dutton, and so they could screw the Conservative faction.
I see both Pyne and Bishop as part of the non-conservative cabal who infiltrated the Liberal Party. I'm really glad that they're gone, and I'm not the least bit surprised that Bishop is coming out and saying these things. She was always a fake Liberal, and yeah, she backed Turnbull. So against Abbott, what more do you want? Yeah.
And it's always like when things don't go their way in politics for women, they play the gender card.
Yeah, even then, it just seems to be a standard tactic. That's why I'm saying, like I didn't know about her university position. Sounds like she's gunning for like a good job, and that's what she's doing. Like she's saying all the things that she's expected to say in her new role. Like she's now going to be a public SJW.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny if she said that politics won't change until it's 50% female. I mean, is that what she actually said? That it won't change until
the culture won't change.
Yeah, the culture won't change. Yeah, so I mean, she's right about that. It would if it got to 50% female. Imagine how bad it would go. It would go down the toilet very, very quickly. It'd change so fast.
Well, if you want to be accelerationist about it, we can go for it. Hey,
yeah, I know. Yeah. It's super accelerationist right there. Let's just make it 100% female. Why not? Why not? Let's just let the system destroy itself as quickly as possible, and that's a pretty good way of doing it.
Yeah. Matty, you are clearly the Fredo of tonight, just causing all these disruptions and interruptions, which segues onto the next topic nicely, which is, should I say the word Fredo, because that is apparently the N word for Italians. Well, that's what Chris Cuomo told us.
Is it?
They can't sell in Italy anymore, can they?
So is Fredo an anti-white racial slur? Is that what he's saying?
Yeah. Let's look at the tape of Chris Cuomo there, the CNN anchor. He's part of the Cuomo political dynasty. His brother Andrew Cuomo is the New York governor. His father Mario Cuomo was a New York governor. So let's have a look here.
Have a fucking problem.
What? What are you gonna do about it?
I'll fucking ruin your shit. I'll fucking throw you down these stairs like a fucking punk.
I thought that's who you were.
No, punk ass bitches from the right call me Fredo. My name is Chris Cuomo. I'm an anchor on CNN. Fredo is from The Godfather. He was that weak brother.
I know it was you, Fredo.
And they use it as an Italian aspersion. Any of you Italian? Are you Italian? It's a fucking insult to your people. It's an insult to your fucking people. It's like the N-word for us. Is that a cool fucking thing?
You're a much more reasonable guy in person than you seem to be on television.
Yeah, but if you want to play, you will fucking play. If you've got something you want to say about what I do on television, then say it. But don't call me a
Hey,
fucking
man,
insult.
hey, listen.
What?
I don't want any problems.
Yeah, you're going to have a big fucking problem.
What's the
It's a
problem?
little different on TV. Don't fucking insult me like that.
I didn't insult you.
Fuck, you call me Fredo. It's like I call you punk bitch. You like that? You want that to be your nickname?
I didn't call you that.
You called me Fredo. You know my name's not fucking
I
Fredo.
thought your name was.
You did not think my name was fucking Fredo. Don't be a liar. You want to be a man, stand up like a man.
I'm standing up,
You
man.
want to be a man out here, then fucking own it. Then own what you said.
man, hey.
Then own what you said.
Listen,
Take
man,
them-
I don't
yeah,
have a
what?
problem with you,
Yeah,
man.
you're gonna have a fucking problem.
What? What are you gonna do about it?
I'll fucking ruin your shit.
something, man.
I'll
Do
fucking
something.
throw you down these stairs like a fucking punk.
Please do.
Why? So
Why?
you
You
can
don't wanna
fucking
do
sue?
that. You don't wanna
So you
do
can fucking sue?
Well, why don't you do it
Go
then?
take a swing. You want to call me Fredo? Take a fucking swing.
I'm not gonna swing
Take
at
a
you.
fucking swing. Watch your fucking hands.
I'm not gonna
Take a
swing
swing.
at you.
Watch your
Hey,
fucking
I'm not
hands.
gonna
Take a
swing.
swing.
I'm
No,
not
no,
gonna
come on,
swing.
boy.
I'm not
Come on,
gonna
boy.
swing.
So you want to call me shit? Call me shit
Hey,
then.
listen,
I'm
man,
right
I'm not
fucking
doing
here.
anything.
I'll fucking wreck your shit. I'll fucking wreck your shit.
stop.
You didn't know what you were doing when
I
you
thought
called
it
me
was your
Fredo?
name, man.
You didn't know.
I thought it was your name.
You didn't know, right? Hey, you didn't know what you were saying, right?
I thought it was his name.
I'm breaking it up.
Here's a little intrigue. I wanted to be like Wonder Woman, and I'm
All right,
Wow.
that's
He looks like he's under a little bit of stress. You know, maybe he's got his name in a little black book
And,
somewhere.
Like he you know, like he's calling out an Italian stereotype, but how did he behave then?
Yeah, like a mob boss.
Yeah. And it's funny because his father Mario is now deceased, but apparently
His name's Mario.
yeah,
Seriously.
apparently his father didn't see The Godfather until he was 81 because he considered it offensive to Italian Americans because he didn't think the mafia existed, which is quite well for a New York governor to say that. That's
Or maybe a New York governor might have a little bit of a incentive to say that as well. Yeah.
so obviously, like with his father and his brother being New York governors, and he's on CNN. That's that's why he's called the Fredo brother.
I just love it when the mask slips on these people. That's
I
amazing.
mean, a lot of people have
Beautiful.
said, and even Mark Dye said this, these guys shouldn't have harassed him in public. But Chris Cuomo, he just should have said something like, yeah, that's hilarious, dickhead, see you later. Like, that's how you sort of handle it. You're like, you don't, you know.
Yeah. He seems a little triggered.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
of course,
you don't start arguing with. If you're a multi-million-dollar person on a TV show with hundreds of thousands, I mean, they still get viewers, hundreds of thousands of viewers. You don't entertain some random coming up to you on the street. I mean, if
Yeah.
someone came up to me on the street and said, "Matty, I think you're the worst person ever," I'd be like, "Sweet ass, go away." I don't care. Like, what? Who are you? It's like, why do I give a shit what you think? Like, I don't even know you. You should have just walked away. Yeah, I didn't actually see what was going. I didn't hear what was going on. Sorry.
oh yeah, you can't
But
hear
I
it.
could see. Yeah, I could see what I could see, and I sort of got the gist of it. To be honest, this story. I mean, no offense to the person who set up the topic, I didn't think it was worthy of discussing. Quite
Oh,
frankly,
well, because now it's become Donald Trump's got involved now, and it's another example of him being a super troll. It's like I thought Cuomo was Fredo as well because of his low ratings, and so he posted on his Facebook a video of Fredo's rant where he's like, I'm smart, and put Cuomo's face over it. And he's also selling Cuomo is Fredo merchandise shirts now.
Donald Trump.
Yes, his campaign.
That's just gold.
But the thing is, like, Cuomo, like, you know, saying Fredo is like the N-word for Italians. Like, African Americans have said this is offensive to us because the N-word was the last thing a lot of us heard before we were lynched. And he also said previously, Cuomo, that fake news is like the N-word for journalists.
On Italians and slavery, the people of Europe who lived on the Mediterranean coast for a good 1,000 years were some of the biggest victims of the Arab slave trade. There were entire regions of coastal Europe which basically became depopulated because it was too dangerous to live near the ocean, near the Mediterranean Sea, because the Arab raiding ships would actually take people away. So it's a bit rich of Africans to be saying, oh, it's offensive to us. Like, Italians have their own history of slavery as well.
And it was
much longer history, probably more people too.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it was also picked up by Mark Dice in his video response that on Chris Cuomo's own CNN show, Anna Navarro, who's one of the Never Trump Republicans, she called Donald Trump Jr. the Fredo of the Trump family because he stayed in New York at Trump Tower, didn't go to the White House. So he allowed a N-word by his definition on his show, and he didn't say, how dare you say that? No, he just let her keep talking.
Obviously, it was just a heat of the moment thing. I also want to clarify what I said before. I was talking about the Black American slave trade. I think if you look at the Middle Eastern slave trade, I think Africans suffered pretty heavily for that as well. But I was more talking about comparing America to Europeans. So I mean, that's what I was mentioning there. But anyway, what I can see out of that Chris Cuomo thing is that he's lost it, and he's in an argument with someone. And you know how, if you ever, I mean, Dave wouldn't know this, but have you ever been in an argument with your missus, because he doesn't have a missus?
Yeah, I just go on to one of the other 17, man.
Yeah.
She starts giving me a hard time. Yeah.
Well, I thought you only had 10 fingers, so I don't know how that 17 comes from.
I can still count it. I can count to 21, dude.
Yeah. But maybe lose my train of thought. But anyway, when you're,
see what I did. See what I did there.
Argument with your missus, and you'll just say, oh, well, blah blah blah. You just say shit like sometimes. I mean, I don't really do this anymore, but I know that in my younger years, I most certainly did it. You just make stuff up off the top of your head, just in the heat of the moment. And he just happens to be a famous bloke who got caught on camera and hasn't learnt that that's probably not the best thing to do. You shouldn't say things you should control your temper, especially in public, and you shouldn't say things that. You shouldn't just make things up in the middle of an argument. It's not a good idea, and most people would have learnt that from a fairly young age. Obviously, Chris Cuomo hasn't, but he does work for CNN, so... Is it CNN or MSNBC?
CNN.
Yeah. So he's obviously a flog. Isn't Chris Cuomo the bloke that said, now, the documents from WikiLeaks, you're not allowed to read them because it's illegal for you to read them, but we can read them in the mainstream media. It's like, no, that's one of the most ridiculous.
Yeah, and he also said before Epstein committed suicide when he was first arrested, it's like, we don't need to cover this story at all. And like, of course, like the Cuomo family has been associated with Epstein.
Oh, well, there you go. That's what I'm saying. Like, he looks like he's under a little bit of stress. Maybe he's got his name in a black book.
Yeah, but like, it's 2019.
Yeah, you never know.
It's 2019.
Maybe there's a painting of him in a dress.
Yeah.
Ooh, that'd be funny.
Yeah, it's 2019. Like, there's a camera phone everywhere. Like, you know, didn't he like realize that, you know, probably someone was going to film it and embarrass him on the internet?
Yeah, it's because it's the current. Yeah.
And in other CNN news, Don Lemon, white men are terrorists, but I go to bed with a white man every night.
Yes.
He's being sued for sexual assault. A man's alleged that he approached Lemon in a public bar, and because he wouldn't leave Lemon alone, that Lemon put allegedly put his hand down his pants and said, "Do you like dick or pussy?" And was it put his hands up his like mustache? It's like really bizarre. It sounds like rubbish to me, like quite absurd.
Yeah.
Isn't Don Lemon is he the one that said that we need to stop dividing people?
Yeah, he said that. Yeah,
and understand that there's white people doing this.
Yeah.
Oh, they're just wonderful people over there at CNN, aren't they? With this charming bunch of blokes and ladies.
But yeah, so yeah, Don Lemon, like, you know, he's vile, but I'm still not going to automatically just believe the accuser.
Don Lemon's time will come. Yeah,
Jacinda Ardern, she's decided to insert herself into Australian politics, saying that Scott Morrison had a lot to answer for about climate change action for the Pacific region. Because
was that before or after? Like she started like eating an entire bale of hay.
Because apparently the Pacific Islands, they're disappearing because of rising sea levels. But
I hear that they can measure it down to the millimetre. Like they measure sea rise to the millimetre.
So
I don't know how they do that.
The reason she said that because there's a Pacific Island Forum on Tuvalu. But it was interesting this week. Craig Kelly, he's been on fire recently. He posted on his Facebook page because he said at a meeting that Tuvalu is actually gaining land. It's not receding.
Yes.
ABC fact check it.
Yep.
And has said that his statement checks out. It's like, so that was like ABC, like they're like, oh damn.
Yeah, but basically climate change is a hoax and it's a fraud and it's a giant it's a what's that operation where you're basically just trying to get money off people? It's this Ponzi scheme. It's standover tactics. It's ridiculous.
Extortion.
It's extortion. There we go.
And Everest, what you just said in the chat, that is, I can't believe you can make such a statement.
What's that?
Holy crap! In Everest.
Which one?
Seriously, mate. I'm gonna consider unfollowing you on Gab for that. That's
Who's
just
that?
Wrong.
Where are we?
In Everest. Yeah, I'm following him on Gab. Like, how could you say that? You understand that Jacinda Ardern's birth name was actually Jason, right?
Hey, she gave birth.
I guess it kind of looks like a girl these days.
When
are we going to get to the bit about sticking stuff down her throat?
Oh yeah, because apparently she gave Nine News reported that Jacinda Ardern, she gave Scott Morrison a dressing down at Tuvalu today, and Alan Jones unloaded on her today. I said Scott Morrison's briefing should say to put a sock down her throat.
Are you gonna get it under the teeth first, or are you just gonna knock those things out?
That's what I said. That's what I said in the chat today. It's like, your teeth are massive. How can you get past them? Well, I can't even do it.
So of course the chat.
Hey, you better stop doing that with your teeth, and Everest will start getting a stiffy, Matty.
Yeah, he was attracted to your boobs last episode. Like, he was the one that pointed out that, I can, see your tits.
I appreciate that. I'm gaining a little bit of weight. I've got to get back into exercising.
So, of course, Alan Jones has been accused of inciting violence against women by, saying this, because apparently he's had a history of inciting violence against women because he said that Julie Gillard should be put in a chaff bag and thrown out to sea, and the Sydney Lord Mayor, Alan Jones.
It's true though that he said, look, we should allow her one hay bale. That should get her across back to New Zealand. Yeah.
No, he didn't say this about Jacinda Ardern. Said about Julia Gillard.
Oh,
Yeah. And
Iran,
Sydney
Iraq, what's
Lord
the
Mayor
difference?
Clover Moore, she wanted to spend $11 million on a cloud arc artwork to hang above George Street, and Alan Jones tweeted, such a waste of money. I can think of what the residents of Sydney would rather hang 58 meters above George Street, and it's not a cloud arc. And he was accused of saying she should be lynched.
Yeah, right.
But the thing was, because I remember that because it's always funny when Alan Jones triggers all these people because he is because he is too big to fail. Basically, he's massively influential. He can get away with this stuff, and so it's always funny the rage on Twitter. But it was funny.
Also, do you think he's got an intersectional shield as well?
Why?
Because he's a homosexual, so they can only go after him so hard.
I don't. Yeah, well, he's not going to touch a woman. We know that.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, eh? Yeah.
But it was interesting that Clover Moore, she was actually a guest on Alan Jones's program that morning because Alan Jones wanted to have her on the show.
Clover Moore, keep her away from Jacinda Ardern.
Yeah. Alan Jones wanted to praise her about her water recycling program. So it's interesting that Alan Jones can put out a tweet like that. And Clover Moore, obviously has seen it, and yet Alan Jones invites Clover Moore on his show, and she agrees to say, yes, I love your recycling program. So, yeah.
Which one is Clover Moore again? Is
Sydney Lord Mayor. She's 70-something.
Is she the one who declared the climate emergency
Yeah,
as well?
she is.
Yeah.
She's known for, wasting all this money on arts and climate change.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember she came...
Amazing.
Yeah, she had some amazing comments around the time of the Martin Place siege as well. I can't quite remember.
She manages to just get re-elected every time. They've sort of
because Sydney. Yeah.
We managed to get we had some decent. Well, we had a Liberal as a Lord Mayor in Melbourne for a number of years, Robert Doyle.
Yeah.
So it is possible to, and Lord Mayor of Brisbane has been a Liberal for quite a while. I mean, forever.
They're all fake conservatives.
Yeah. Opposition,
Yeah.
Still
No nationalists.
Establishment.
Yeah.
It's still the ruling class. It's not different, really.
And enough about all of these fake outrages, although they are fun to discuss, because there's been major stock market plunges in the past 24 hours. In the US, the Dow is down 800 points, or 3%, and today Australia's ASX lost 60 billion, or 3% of its value, which has fueled fears of a global recession. Obviously, what's happening in China and Hong Kong is influencing that, but there's been in Australia, fears of a recession for quite a while because of sluggish wages growth and obviously the economic forecast. But it could be. We'll see what happens tomorrow, but this could be the recession that we've never had.
Bring on the crash. Bring it on.
And okay, so one thing that I haven't noticed here in this is that the housing prices. So Australia. I'm not sure what the latest news on house prices are, but I think that the prices have definitely dropped. I think they might have maybe stagnated for a few months. I haven't heard the latest. I'm actually trying to look for it. Okay, it looks like Sydney. There's an article from 3 days ago saying that Sydney sales above $1 million take a dive, and I can't actually find any other up-to-date information on the latest house price data in Australia. But I don't see any notes regarding that. I think wages being down is a big thing, but I think that wages in Australia have been stagnant for 15, 20 years in real terms, just because of immigration. I mean, we keep bringing in so many people, and we keep shipping all our manufacturing offshore. The only thing that we're actually producing is raw materials. We do a little bit of manufacturing, but not much at all. We produce a lot of raw materials. They're the only things that we really, of value that we really produce, but then everything else is a service economy. just generally, obviously, we do produce some things that we export, like food products and all that kind of stuff, but it's really not been very good for the last few decades, and wages have dropped. But while wages have either stagnated or dropped in real terms, we've had this massive housing bubble, which I believe popped in 2018, and I haven't seen any reason to change that opinion. Obviously, these things, it's not like it's a major pop. I think it's sort of started deflating, I should say, so it could potentially reinflate. But you have stories of the RBA wanting to lower interest rates down to 0%. We have this, it's this strange myth based on, it's not a myth, it's a lie. We were talking about it before. I was talking about it before, the cartel, the fiat currency debt cartel that I believe are run by archons and Satan. But we have this strange idea that if you want to make the economy better, you simply flood it with money, which is just plain incorrect. What you can do when you flood an economy with money is make it appear on the books that you aren't actually having a recession or an economic downturn, because there's additional cash going into the system, so it makes the numbers look like they're going bigger. But in real terms, the purchasing power has actually gone down. And this is the thing, this is what we've seen in Australia. This is like wages growth going down in real terms and things like that. And wages have been stagnant for years and years and years now. So all that's happened is we've flooded people in who we never asked to come in. We never said that they could come in, and we've flooded the economy with extra money. And it's not increasing productivity, it's just making it so that people with mortgages can spend a little bit more money for Christmas, so the GDP numbers look bigger, and maybe a few extra retail staff get hired, but retail staff aren't producing anything really of value. I mean, sure, people enjoy what they do and if they're helpful, but it's not like they are actually producing wealth. Like, they're not going and creating a new product and manufacturing a new product, or developing a new product, or digging it out of the ground, or farming something. They're not actually adding to that bedrock of wealth. They are increasing the standard of living, but they're not actually making us wealthier. They're not helping the economy in any great way. So
can I just ask you about this? Because I often see economic analysis that talks about how the next stage after industrialization is to move to a services economy. That they analysts talk. Yeah, I was going to ask you. Because that just seems like absolute rubbish.
So I'll finish what my point regarding this. So people are saying all this stuff about China trade war, If recession hits, then if a recession, a recession could hit the USA or China, but I think it's much more likely that we're going to have our own recession. And because the financial system across the world is a Ponzi scheme and it's all connected, all it's going to take, I believe, is a serious recession in one country, and the contagion will spread absolutely everywhere. Because, what happens if Australians aren't importing crappy Chinese goods anymore? That's their main export.
Well,
then they're going to lose out. And then, if there's a trade issue,
This is why
buying stuff from US, and there's going to be issues with the financial system, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It would be hard to go in depth. I'd have to go and write it down and fully articulate it in writing in an essay if I was going to point it out. So I don't see these Dow Jones loss things as indications of a recession, but the wages and the fact that our house prices have dropped, and the fact that there's so much debt and it's not going anywhere, and interest rates are so low, these are very precarious. But this is what I've been saying this for years. The problem with recession, the problem with predicting recessions and black swan events is that your reputation can outlast, the economy can outlast the reputation of the people calling it out. Now, with regards to the services economy nonsense, that is just an absolute load of crap. That's what they sold to the West in order to justify shipping our manufacturing.
Yeah, they did.
That's all it is. And it's just ultimately made us less wealthy.
Well, what is...
Well, I'll finish this and you ask a question. But we as a Western nation should be the manufacturing powerhouse of the world. We should be developing the best products that we can possibly develop ever. But the regulatory system is such that isn't really possible, because all these people have to do is ship their factories over to China or India or Africa and get unskilled, cheap slave labor to sell us iPhones for $500 that cost $10 to make. Anyway, we get asked a question, or did you want to make a comment, Tim?
Well, it's always described this service economy, that's what we're going to be. The main thing that people are told when they're asked what a service economy is just basically foreign students at universities. That's what it is. I mean, can you name anything else?
Service economy is part of the immigration Ponzi then, yeah.
Well, I noticed that the federal government, they gave away 5,000 new high-skilled visas just this week.
Yeah, I heard something like that. Yeah. One of the ironies as well is I hear people talk about how China, they need to move their economy to a services economy.
Well, right now they're building bridges to nowhere and they have empty towns. So
yeah.
Well,
whatever they want to do to pretend that they're actually growing economically when they aren't. That's what the BRI is all about. The BRI is about imperialism and imposing their own power whilst building infrastructure that they can then benefit off economically. So I mean, that's China saying, shit, we need to do something about our internal economy. We need to go and essentially screw other countries out of money and sovereignty at the same time. I mean, with regards to the Chinese students, I mean, I look at that and I think, okay, yeah, look, that because they're foreigners bringing in their own resources. I mean, they're using yuan to buy Australian dollars, meaning they're pushing the value of the dollar up, which, I mean, yeah, sure, maybe that helps us a little bit, but really, it's I don't buy that that's actual economic growth, especially considering how subsidised it is by the government. I mean, maybe you could consider it actual positive benefit, like a positive economic activity, if it wasn't subsidised and they were getting that many people and these people weren't actually staying here, like they were leaving afterwards. But you know, a lot of them end up staying here just to add to the congestion. And the amount of, when I was driving Uber, I constantly meet Asian students, Asians, Indians, all these foreigners coming over here going, yeah, well, you know what, when I finish my degree, I'll just try and get a job here. And I'm thinking, I mean, I was polite and I'm like, oh, yeah, okay, because I wanted those 5-star rating. But I'm just thinking, like, wait a minute, excuse me, that's not part of the deal. You come over here for your education and then you piss off home. You don't get to stay. You don't get to take our jobs. No. And then meanwhile, all these they drag all these foreigners into push down Uber prices, like prices of Uber, which is something, another part of the service economy that is more productive than a lot of part of the service economy, because you're driving people around and you're saving them the hassle of bringing their own car, and it's adding efficiency and standard of living and all that kind of thing. It's obviously you're not producing anything tangible, but you are just increasing comfort. But when you have tens of thousands of Indians come in and take our jobs, it's just, and push the prices down, it's just, it ends up being parasitism, if you ask me. That's just parasitic. It ends up being a parasitic system where all the jobs that could have gone to white Aussies have actually just gone to foreigners, because they're willing to do it for $10 an hour. And so all these fears of a recession and all that kind of stuff have very, very little to do with stock market going up and down. Like, a stock market going down doesn't mean that there's going to be a recession, just like the stock market going up doesn't mean that there's going to be economic growth. It's just, put it this way, we're talking about I've mentioned the cabal a few times today. The cabal, like we'll call them the cabal, the Satanists, the parasite, the high-ranking parasites, whatever you want to call them, they could crash the ASX and the Dow Jones just like that. Like, you don't understand how much money and influence these people actually have. They literally control the money supply. They could destroy the stock market overnight if they wanted to. They're just ridiculous. No, well, that could. It's got nothing to do with the economy.
Well, they'll probably utilize that power if they don't want Trump to be re-elected, because his main pitch at the moment is that the economy is booming. But if a recession happens either late this year or early next year, then he's basically gone. That's it.
I should clarify that it's not. I said that the stock market has nothing to do with the economy. What I should have said was, it's not a one-to-one correlation, and they can be completely independent of each other.
Okay.
If the economy gets stronger, then over time the stock market should rise, because the stock market is supposed to reflect business incomes, but they aren't necessarily 100% connected. You can have huge drops in stock market value with very high economic growth. It's all about expectation and news, and a lot of it is likely due to the threats of a trade war with China. And I agree that if recession does hit the US, it's unlikely that Trump will be re-elected. He could still get there. But that said, I think this election, because of demographics, it's unlikely he'll get elected anyway, which would be another very big red bill for the normies out there. Even if there wasn't a recession, if he did all these things that were good and he still lost, people are going to start asking questions, and that's when we need to be there to saying, do you know why Donald Trump lost? Race. That's why he lost. If he loses in 2020, it will be completely down to race.
This is why we have to talk about race.
Yeah.
We're coming towards the end of the show. Does anyone else have a topic that they'd like to discuss?
Do we have any more questions?
I'll check.
Entropy?
There was one earlier in the show. It's quite vulgar, so I chose not to read it.
Oh, okay. They're the best ones.
Oh, you want me to read it out?
No, don't worry about that.
Okay.
I had a question that you didn't answer.
Yeah, you came on the show, and what was the other one?
I can't even remember now. I think it's. I think it was something along the lines of, should white women now avoid foreigners after the Sydney stabbing, 13% and 50% and all that?
Oh, it's up to independent women what they want to do.
Yes, and we can't be whorephobic.
No, well, I'm libertarian on
That's
this.
true.
I mean, if they want to
It's
choose
not
that profession, that's up to them.
Well, so is the actual story that... so I actually missed a lot of the story. All I saw was a nutcase running down the street, stabbing people, yelling Allahu Akbar.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh, another one. Watch as the media tries to spin it that this has nothing to do with Islam.
Yeah.
Because, you know, it was a Muslim, therefore it's nothing to do with Islam and Islamophobia and all that. But if it's a white guy, then, white guys, we've got to stop the white guy, etc., etc., etc.
Yep.
So was it actually a pro going to a private room and then gotten done or something?
Well, yeah, that's the backstory of the woman who got murdered. She was a prostitute.
Yeah, he had an appointment to see her at
1:30,
1:30, stabbed her to death, and then he went on his rampage out on the street.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Well, yeah, you know, she should work in a brothel instead.
Oh, well, a bit late for that advice now.
Yeah.
I want to...
I saw pictures of her. She was actually very attractive. She was very, very pretty.
If we've got time for one more topic, there's something I want to... Did you see about Ben Shapiro? He's being talked about again today because he said that people who work two jobs to make, put a roof over their head and feed their family. Your problem is that you got two poor-paying jobs, and that's a you problem.
Spoken like someone who's lived with a silver spoon in his mouth his entire life. But you can give me a break, mate. It's not... What are these people going to do? Just walk up to Bear Stearns... Well, not Bear Stearns, that place is dead. Just walk up to Wall Street and walk up to the first bank and just be like, make me a CEO today, mofos, I demand it. Ben Shapiro said that we should get a better job. Come on, give me a break.
Well, we can't all be
sure,
like...
There's a case to be made for wanting a high-paying job, and that's fair enough, but it doesn't work like that, and
Yeah.
it's just another case of Ben Shapiro
I mean,
saying something
we can't all be
was-
like Jeffrey Epstein, just being a maths teacher and then go work at Bear Stearns and then become a billionaire.
Apparently Epstein won the lottery in like 2008. That just raises your trust in lotteries, doesn't it?
Oh my goodness!
That
Is
might be
that
fake
the
news,
explanation
but also
is that the explanation they're trying to come up with now?
I think that was one of them. I saw someone shared it, so it could be fake news.
Yeah.
But I heard that he might have won the lottery, and that could be. Yeah, like Tim said, it's not like everyone's a Jeffrey Epstein with connections and can just be plucked from obscurity and turned into a billionaire overnight. It doesn't work like that. I mean, come off it. You can't. I'm looking for work right now, and I'm telling you, it's not easy. Like, you can't just walk into a high-paying job, even if you got experience. It doesn't work like that. Especially not now, considering our nation has been absolutely flooded with workers. Same for the United States. And maybe Ben Shapiro should give up his job and work a working class job for a little while and work as though he's been, assume that he's only earning maybe just a bit above minimum wage, trying to raise a couple of kids at the same time, and has to work 2 jobs, and see how easy it is to just go and find a better job.
I think you actually touched on like kind of where we can, have an angle on this. Maybe Ben Shapiro should stop trying to push the idea that America is a place where anybody can go along and be American, and actually stand up for Americans and say, hey, there are actually too many immigrants to the country. Stop illegal immigration, stop legal immigration. That's a great way to raise wages.
Because that's exactly right, and perfect point.
But the thing is, he's not going to do that.
Big reason. Well, he's not going to do that because he's a Zionist and he believes in mass immigration. It's a controlled opposition placed in there by people of a higher power to say things like, I don't care about race. In America, anyone can be an American. And then on the other hand, what do you mean we have to open the borders for Israel? We can't do that. He's one of them. But yeah, it's a great point regarding wages, because all these people who are working 2 jobs, if America hadn't been flooded with 150 million immigrants in the last 50 years, then families wouldn't need 2 jobs, because the jobs that they had would pay well enough. So don't give us this crap, Ben.
It reminds me of when
you're an idiot.
our greatest treasurer, Joe Hockey, he was asked how could young people afford homes, and he said you've got to get a good job which pays good money. And then he said, in another interview about, I think it was cost of living, he said poor people don't drive cars, they don't need to worry about like price of petrol.
The second one was funny. I mean, the first one, I thought it was fine for him to say that, because it's a slightly different situation. I mean, people asked him how they could afford the homes, and he's just like, oh, well, just get a better job, which is true. You can get a better job, but it's just not as easy as that. Like, you can't just walk into a better job. And the problem for Hockey was he either didn't understand the truth about why houses were so expensive, or he didn't want to tell the truth about why houses were so expensive. So he's not going to turn around and say, well, the government inflated the house price by flooding the country with too much money, and now we're flooding it with foreigners. Therefore, the house prices keep going up, and we need to, because we as politicians all own property. Therefore, if we lose money, if the prices go down, then we all lose out, and they're all mortgaged, so we'll lose the houses and we'll end up being bankrupt. I mean, that's not exactly going to go down all too well, even though it's the truth. So he has to pull some story like, well, get a better job, which is kind of like saying, well, I have no money, what should I do? It's like, well, get a job. Okay, yeah, fair enough. Okay, but I'm homeless. I'm homeless. How can I get a job? I haven't got a suit. I haven't got anything.
The reason why I raised Ben Shapiro saying this is because he's taken quite a few tumbles lately. I mean, he was riding high after Milo's career kind of self-destructed, because that was the sort of the big rivalry that was going on. But ever since he announced his new book, The Right Side of History, which previously in a tweet he'd said it was the stupidest saying ever invented, then he had that interview with Andrew Neil on the BBC, the chairman of The Spectator, who was asking him tough questions to back up his arguments, and Ben Shapiro was like, you're a leftist, I'm not taking kindly to your questioning, I'm out of here. So he's sort of,
There's been a little bit more than that. Like, he's been, cheerleading for bombing Iran and people.
Yes,
like, hey,
that as well.
Yeah.
You know, agreeing that there is a white nationalist epidemic.
Yeah, and like the whole not backing Trump, like back when
Well, he calls himself a sometimes Trumper.
He's just convenient.
All I can say about Mr. Shapiro is every single time.
I just don't like him because he's a conservative neocon. I mean,
I don't like him because he's controlled opposition.
He's an establishment, old guard conservative who left over from the George W. Bush days.
Controlled opposition.
Exactly, he's controlled opposition. He was placed in his role by people higher up than him. I mean, he's had a lot of funding from outside backers. Guess what country they come from? I'm sure it's not hard to. And they put him in. I think it was Adam Piggott who wrote a really good article. It was either Adam Piggott or maybe it was Hilton. Probably Piggott. It's more along his lines where he's just called out Shapiro for being, what was it, the Mike Tyson of debating, where he'd go and debate people that were really crap, and then when he went up against that guy from The Spectator, he ended up making an absolute fool of himself because he was just thoroughly unprepared, and he's nowhere near as good at debating as he thinks he is. Like, he can debate easy talking points. He can debate things that are easy to counter, but if you debated Shapiro about, remember when Mark Collett did the Zionist debate and they were discussing the JQ and
that would be a really interesting one to watch.
And the tribal question, I mean, obviously I can't predict it 100%, but it would not surprise me at all if Mark Collett debated Ben Shapiro on Israel and Zionism and the JQ, that there's a good chance Ben Shapiro might lose it and sort of stand up.
He'd run away.
He'd walk away.
He'd run away. Run away! Run away! Run away!
He'd run away, or he wouldn't. He'd either run away or he'd fail miserably. At least he wouldn't do very well because Collett's too over the brief. And let's be honest, once you're tribe woke and you understand the arguments, because these people haven't actually had to argue against it before, they don't know how to argue against it. And let's just face it, they can't. They can't, because a lot of their influence is based on hiding that aspect of reality from us. It's so liberating.
I've just got some breaking news that's broken just now, that Scott Morrison has condemned Alan Jones for his shove the sock down the throat. So this is the quote. He just came out of a 12-hour meeting at Tuvalu, said, "The comment has been relayed to me on what's been reported to me. I find that very disappointing, and of course it's way out of line. I have 2 daughters, so you can expect that's how I'd feel personally about it. I'll leave others to explain what they've said and how they've said it."
Cuck Morrison. Good Scott, bad Scott. Which way really good.
Honestly, like, whoa, we're basically surfing the timeline at this point. Just laugh at it. That's just oh god.
Well, we were talking about it earlier on, so it is a new development in sock throatgate.
Sockgate.
I hope ScoMo is going to enjoy the recession that is likely to come next year. Obviously, I can't be 100% right on that, but if the housing prices keep going, then there's a good chance there'll be a recession in the next year or so. And if East PM, when there's an economic recession, then what are people going to do? It's like, they don't want to vote for Tits Shorten, the socialist ALP idiots, but then Scott Morrison is in a recession and he's not going to know what to do anyway. So maybe then we'll finally get a third party rising. Maybe we'll get a Brexit situation where we get a new party coming to the fore. Or maybe people will go back to the ALP. Like, who knows?
Vote Fraser Anning.
That'd be absolute acceleration. Vote Fraser Anning.
Australia first. I think whoever you can find. Oh, not Australia first.
If you're surprised.
Where is it? No. Anyway. You go.
If you're surprised that's come out of Scott Morrison's mouth, you shouldn't be. The guy's... He's establishment, so he's controlled by the exact same entity, group, whatever you want to call it, as all of the rest of them are. They're all controlled by the same power. They're all controlled by the same thing. Scott Morrison might think he's a Christian, but he's 100% working for Satan. He just doesn't realise it. And this is just exactly what you'd expect from a member of the ruling class, the ruling parasite class. He's not as bad as a lot of them, but ultimately he's not resisting the evil. Therefore, he, as someone who is in a position of power, he's actually working for them, whether he realizes it or not.
I got the impression from your comment, Matty, there that you want us to finish up now. I've got a few other things I can mention, but yeah, maybe we'll call it now.
Yeah, I'm ready to finish up. I've been ready to finish for like 45 minutes.
Oh, well, you should have just told us to, like...
No, I kept talking, so I'm not blaming you. I'm just saying.
Oh, the Ashes is on, so it's time to get home and watch some the Aussies play at Lords.
Ooh.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Do you have to work tomorrow?
No, I don't.
Oh, you bastard.
Yeah.
All
Someone
right.
just said in the chat, a Matty Rose far right party. We should start the far right party.
Far right party.
Yeah,
Yes, do it. Like literally call it the far right party.
Extreme far right party.
Extreme far right party.
Yes. Yes. Just own it.
The far right.
Yeah.
I'm a member of the far right.
Just like have ads. Yeah, going, hey, we're the far right party. It'd be a meme and go around Australia.
Well, thanks everyone for watching tonight. We've had a good crowd tonight, and the live chat was active. A few people said they couldn't access entropy, so I'm not sure what I did wrong.
Can you say entropy 10 times really fast?
No, we're stretched for time. Are you writing a question in there, Matty?
Well, oh, sorry, I forgot to mute my mic. Someone in Everest, he retracted the message, but I should. Nah, I'm not going to embarrass him. He made a very funny comment in the chat about his missus and things, but he retracted it, so I won't embarrass him any further.
Yeah. He gives away a lot in that chat in Everest.
Yeah, that's right.
All right, so make sure you check out the unshackled.net. We've been very active throughout the week, keeping up with the latest news. Yeah, I'll leave you to plug your own thing.
Yeah, everybody just skip the social media middleman. Forget Facebook. Facebook is dying. Just come straight to our site. Come to www.xyz.net.au. If you want, follow us on Gab.
Breaking. Sorry. Port Film Co-op just said that Epstein's neck has broken bones and it's consistent with an attack. So
we did say that he'd been strangled.
Did I?
Yeah. Yeah, we didn't talk about the broken bones. I don't think we gave that detail,
bones.
but we did touch on it. I did reply to him
that?
in the comments. Yeah, I know that.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's great news.
Well, like, you know, when you do hang yourself, like your neck does snap.
Not with paper though.
Doesn't he mean? Is it like the broken bones are consistent with
either suicide or strangulation?
Strangulation. Well, no, you don't bones don't necessarily break if you hang yourself. It's not necessary that.
Well, that's break. I'm just saying what the autopsy has concluded.
Ah, okay. All right, yeah. So I just want to say a special thank you to Duncan Lewis for watching the episode. Thank you so much.
We're getting a new ASIO boss, I think, soon.
Oh, are we? No, I kind of like old Duncan.
Gotta have a drink with Duncan, because Duncan's your mate. Yeah.
all these other people supposedly in our movement have had a beer with ASIO. I mean, what's his face? The guy. Remember the video that I
yeah.
Was his name Married to the Alt-Right? He's like, oh, he got to have a beer with ASIO. I've never had a beer with ASIO.
Or are you feeling left out?
Oh, God.
We actually got another super chat. Radical Islamophobe. He wants the rabbit ears.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Rabbit ears. So yeah, you have to do it again.
Oh, okay. So who wants the rabbit ears?
Radical Islamophobe, US $10. I mean, it's a big one. So
yeah. See, no, I told you that we were supposed to do. See, the Radical Islamophobe. I blame the other two fools. I wanted to give them a rabbit ears, but
you can rabbit ears yourself, Matty.
No,
hurry up.
There we go. Yeah.
Hold on.
You're officially cooler than both of us.
Rabbit shoulders.
Huh.
Just try to get that there. Rabbit shoulders. Sorry, doesn't really work.
So thank you for the super chats tonight, radical Islamophobe. You certainly are a great supporter of ours.
My check will be in the mail. Will it there?
I haven't been able to learn how to cash it out yet.
You got to email them, tell them where to send it, and they'll send it to you at the start of the month.
All right. Yeah, I'll do that.
They sent it to me. They sent it straight to my PayPal account. It was fantastic. It was just nice big deposit into the PayPal. Like,
Sounds good. And where can people find you, Matty? Because YouTube, they like to play their tricks.
So you should link my channel in the description. But
I do always, but
yeah. So you can go to Matty's Modern Life, which is my YouTube channel. Also, don't forget to tune into Matty Rose Live. Me and David, the lovely man sitting right, where is he? That side.
You're pointing to yourself.
There you go. That man there, the bald man. That's
Hello,
David.
everybody.
He's my co-host on XIZ Live. We go roughly 9:15, provided Dave is actually on time, every Monday night. And we talk about all the things that we want to talk about. It's a similar structure to this show, except we dwell on topics for a little bit longer instead of going bang, 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 bang.
Yeah. I on this show, I reel you back in and say, get on topic. We're not talking about race all the time.
We like the tangents.
Yeah, we like to talk about things and go on
flamethrower tanks.
And, all that kind of stuff. And it's good fun. It is.
Yep.
It's both a serious political discussion show and us shit posting and having a good time at the same time. And you can also follow me on Gab and Minds, and please follow me on BitChute. I've actually got 1,000 Gab followers now.
Oh,
yeah, good work, Matty. You're doing great. You deserve it. You've been flogging it.
Well, I wish that YouTube hadn't screwed up their algorithm and suppressed everyone who was independent. I'd probably have 10,000 subscribers by now.
We'll
but,
see, because Rita Panahy's been suspended from Twitter. I wonder if she'll open a Gab account.
Wait, so she's suspended
Rita.
as in banned?
I'm not sure if it's permanent, but there's a free Rita campaign.
Okay, hopefully it's permanent, so she comes to Gab.
Yeah, do it, Rita. She's our greatest non-white ally. She's our second greatest non-white ally.
Yeah. That's right. Get them all over. Let's get everyone over to the Gab so that we can red pill everyone on the tribe. It'll be hilarious.
All right. And of course,
what is all this discussion here? What? Yeah,
James is not here, but we'll plug his channel, the Rational Rise. He's got a new show coming up, the Patriarch Hour, which we'll talk about traditional gender roles and how they're. When they mix together, they're a positive thing. Well, when he means mix, they're separate but combined. As long as they're separate, then it leads to a more cohesive society.
So, I was reading the comments. What was that?
Well, that's a stupid comment. Yeah. Anyway, and final thing, good news of the week is that Fat Pizza is coming back to TV soon, which is great in the current year. So you get offended, I get offended, everyone gets offended. It's going to be great.
It'll be epic. Yeah.
So thanks everyone for watching and allowing us to Fredo on. And we'll see you again next week.
Cheerio.
See ya.
The Uncackables.